Before we get to know our dear panelists, we will first introduce our moderator for today's talk.
Mr. Wanggo Gallaga is a highly experienced and well-decorated writer and filmmaker. He has produced countless films and other media-related materials, ranging from full-length feature films such as Sonata, Chanak, TV series like Hanging Out, to theater, events, advertising, and magazines. He's currently the faculty instructor at the De La Salle College of St. Benilde, teaching scriptwriting, Philippine film history, film criticism, and writing for television.
His writing prowess was critically received well as he was nominated for his writing in Sonata at the Golden Screen Awards for Best Original Screenplay and Best Original Story, Star Awards for Movies for Indie Movie Screenwriter of the Year, ASEAN International Film Festival and Awards for Best Screenplay, and was nominated in 2019 at the Pista ng Pelikulang Pilipino for Best Screenplay with his film Open. Without further ado, let us all give a warm welcome to Mr. Wanggo Gallaga.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here with us. It is my honor to introduce to you our amazing panel for today's discussion on whether Philippine cinema is dead. To start off, let's begin with Miss Madonna Tarrayo, who is the President and CEO of Unitel Straight Shooters Media Incorporated. Maria Madonna Tarrayo's ascent from the ranks proves that she's not only a talented creative, but is likewise a hardworking and capable leader. Her experience from being a writer to production manager, executive producer to client services head, to president and group COO, and to her current position as president and chief executive officer have equipped her with the requisite leadership and management skills needed to deal with people from across a broad spectrum of ranks and roles. She has graduated with a degree in communication arts, major in broadcasting, cum laude, from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She is currently taking her graduate program at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco, majoring in communication and media technologies. She is also the festival director for Cine Filipino, which has produced films such as I Love You with All My Hypothalamus, The Eternity Between Seconds, The Last Cha-Cha of Anita, amongst others. At present, she concurrently heads the Commercial Production Houses Group, or CPHG, and is chairman of the Advertising Suppliers Association of the Philippines, or ASAP. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Madonna Tarrayo. Next, we have Sir Alemberg Ang. He is an educator, filmmaker, and producer, and after teaching for 10 years, he has shifted into a career of film producing. He started with Alvin B. Yapan's directorial debut, Ang Panggagahasa kay Fe, or The Rapture of Fe, in 2009, which won the Special Jury Prize at the Cinemalaya Independent Film Festival and the Best Digital Feature Film at the 33rd Cairo International Film Festival. His collaboration with Yapan is grounded on their shared interest with the interactions of film and literary aesthetics. Aside from Yapan, he has collaborated with other filmmakers, mostly first-time and new filmmakers. His filmmaking is shaped by his passion for teaching, socio-civic issues, and the Philippine arts and literature. He dreams of one day making literature mainstream. Ladies and gentlemen, Alemberg Ang. And finally, last but not the least, we have Ms. Rianne Soriano, who is a film director, producer, writer, consultant, and educator whose works focus on audiovisual productions and film criticism. She primarily directs independent films and commercial and corporate productions. She's the resident critic of Business World and herword.com, and she writes for Yahoo Movies, Yahoo Travel, and Yahoo Voices. Her films have been in exhibition and competition in various local and international film festivals. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Rianne Soriano. To start off our forum, Ms. Rianne Soriano will be sharing with us a presentation about our topic, Is Cinema Dead? Ms. Rianne, please take it away.
Yes, magandang hapon sa lahat. So let me share my screen. Okay, I hope you see it. Let me just... There. So for this, I pondered on the big question by looking at cinema's history. So I tried looking at it with the bigger picture in mind So my presentation for today is focused on what happened in cinema's history, its milestones and declines, its challenges, and how the industry coped up through the years and decades. Okay, so let me start. So if you notice, humans are naturally born storytellers and story audiences. From kids, yung parents, they tell stories to their kids. We get engaged by speakers through anecdotes. We even the priests during homily tell stories. A lot of our books have stories to engage the audiences, and I think that proves how we love stories. Okay, and cinema score is storytelling. Films have told stories countless of times already for more than 100 years, and because of that, cinema has thrived as an audiovisual art form. So where is the industry headed at this point? First, we have to understand its history, and it's yun nga, yung milestones and declines niya through the years and decades. So it's good also to look at film as an art form, film as a product, and film as an experience. And some other questions like, where is film watched? How is film watched? Because it has changed through the years and decades. So just a brief look at how the history of cinema evolved since the very the very time it was born. So we started, you know the history, right? So it started with Nickelodeons, picture houses. For Nickelodeons, you're alone and parang you peep through it to watch. And then nagkaroon na ng what do you call this? Projection. So we have the picture houses. And then eventually, jump decades later, we have the multiplexes. And syempre, there came a point when the technology led to producing videotapes where you can rent or purchase films that probably you've watched before in the movie house. And then came the VCDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, and the video files where you can either rent these things through the likes of iTunes, diba? And some of them can also be purchased. And then fast forward, we now have the streaming platforms. So we have a lot of these platforms that are free, or you can rent, you can purchase, or even subscribe. So yan yung mga Netflix and Disney Plus. So with regards to the theatrical viewing experience, of course, we started with silent films. We had talkies, and then anaglyph 3D, color films. We have animation. Maraming klase ng exhibitions like Cinema Under the Stars, giant screens. We have 3D stereoscopic, 4DX, HFR, ScreenX. Napakarami nila. Okay, so maraming klase ng pwede natin panoorin kumbaga sa exhibition ng mga pelikula through the years. Now, we also are very interested on how things have evolved and how film is both. There's this question also: film as art or commerce, and which is the priority of who? So we have the big screen. It started with the big screen where it feels larger than life. And then right now we have both big screen and small screen where it tends to be more personal, the way you watch the films. So what you notice with big screen kasi it's communal viewing. So there's this expectation also that it's one continuous watch time versus yung private or small group viewing where it's one continuous watch time, or you can pause it, or you continue it at a later time. So these are generally the two options we have when we watch films nowadays, diba? So yon. ay, ito pala yung kanina. So, anyway, nabanggit ko na yung dito, no? So, silent films, talkies, analog 3D, color films, we have animation, cinema under the sky, where it's exterior, minsan sa parking, ganyan, sa park, and then you have giant screens like IMAX, Dolby, digital, yung mga ganon. Then, 3D stereoscopic, 4DX, HFR, and ScreenX nga. So, let's move on to the challenges that cinema faced through the years. So, itong mga declines na to happen usually when there's a recession, there's a financial crisis. I remember noong 1990s, there was this Asian financial crisis which really affected industries, including the film industry. So, of course, kung may financial crisis, it affects cinema. And alongside with that, technological innovation both offers advantages and challenges to cinema. Like, for example, yung innovations back the days na there came TV, it kind of threatened cinema. They said cinema is going to die. And then you have the home video, yung mga VHS, Betamax, diba? You can watch, I remember as a kid, I was watching E.T. in a VHS tape, even Star Wars. So they said at some point, may mga nagsasabi, this became threats to cinema. Or even the offerings like 3D, yun nga yung HDR, 4DX, parang sabi, it's just a fad. And then after that, bababa rin yung demand for that. It's not going to be sustainable. But some people would say, maybe after the 3D, wala na masyado magto-2D. So it opened a lot of discussions. So somehow there's a sort of decline there because when the novelty wears off, the innovation, the bells and whistles naturally slows down the numbers. And of course, you have challenges on piracy. So, of course, yung back the days nga nung nagkaroon ng home video and then you had torrent and ngayon the issues on like there's always a debate about the same day theatrical and streaming issues, di ba? Ayun. And then content. So some people they tell us that parang factory style cinematic products yung mostly na nako-consume ng tao, especially these days where stories na those stories paying attention to the language, tradition and form of what cinema it has been as an art form tend to lose their chance of getting produced. And then of course we have the pandemic because people just stopped going to theaters. So I think it's good to have these historical background and the challenges that cinema faced through the years so that we can have a better means to understand perhaps where are we headed to right now. So it's also, I think, very important to mention about what happened during this milestone in cinema, which was yung nagkaroon ng digital technology, digital filmmaking, because it democratized filmmaking and digital technology opened many possibilities. It led to a lot more filmmakers to be able to produce their works without having to spend millions of pesos because film stocks pa lang tens of thousands na per roll. So hindi talaga kaya, pero because it was because of the digital technology, it democratized filmmaking. But on the flip side, it led to the tendency of relevant voices getting drowned by the overwhelming content because there's just so many there's too much content sometimes. Yun yung description. Because everyone can make movies and there are minimal filters in the process of releasing films using the different platforms. So sometimes yun yung parang trade-off din na everyone can shoot a film, but yun nga, minsan ang hirap maghanap kung ano yung gusto mo because ang daming options, diba? Ayun. So let's move on to audience expectations and demands. So we have nga theatrical exhibitions and then yung streaming services. So like I mentioned kanina, ang theatrical, it's a communal experience. It's meant, the way I see it right now, especially because of the turn of events, even before COVID actually, parang yung theatrical, it's more meant now for a more eventful experience for the audience. Of course, if it's theatrical, we have industry standard projection and speakers. We have comfortable seats. We can have food and drinks na the usual, popcorn, drinks, ganyan. So it's that kind of experience. And it's a communal experience because it's public. I mean, anyone can buy a ticket and watch with you. Or like-minded people come together and watch together. And kasi yung dynamics when you watch with other people, may affect yon sa'yo. So it's that kind of experience. Meanwhile, you have streaming. So this is, like I said, more personal experience. It's more private and it's within your control. So of course, you can have yung high-end audiovisual equipment. You have your own cinema room, but you can even watch a film inside your restroom using your smallest phone screen. I mean, anywhere. You can watch anywhere while taking a break from something or while you're doing something else, you're also watching. You can start or pause at any time, which is not something that can be done in a theatrical exhibition. So, yeah. Now, we all know that, and we acknowledge, especially because of the pandemic, the current cinema models are currently in decline. Diba? So, sabi nga nila, is cinema dead? I think new waves will come in because there's something that's happening. Of course, we want to survive. And like I said, new waves will come in. And cinema experience adjusts to the times, the technology, and the cultural and social changes around us. And finding opportunities, new opportunities for like entrepreneurs and new business models can actually keep cinema alive. Because for the last 100 years, despite the declines, it has it was able to survive. Okay, so sustaining to thriving cinema, we have to acknowledge still that making films costs money, and the reality is businesses favor profit over art, and big studios tend to like when we look at, for example, Hollywood, they mine IP or intellectual property, and they stick to the formula, oftentimes playing safe, and they generally avoid taking risks by not challenging common aesthetics. But I tend to see possibilities as well because I know some studios who do this. Like some studios do mostly commercial projects, then they try to diversify by funding or maybe distributing art films, indie gems, festival offerings as well. So may ganon. Okay? So it's important that we value cinema as a creative endeavor. And I think film literacy is very important. How we should appreciate film as an art form, because if the masses are they're film literate, they will be more appreciative of relevant films, of films that maybe challenge the norm even. So film as part of culture and history, they will have that kind of awareness and they can better appreciate film. And of course, alongside with film naman ever since is innovation. So improving the cinema experience. Like for example, right now to bring back the audience maybe to cinemas, maybe there are like more specialized mga love seats, may mga certain promotional na ginagawa, 'di ba? To attract them. Pero story is king. Pag meron pa rin talaga silang gusto na panoorin, babalik naman sila. And napapansin natin na bumabalik na. Ayun. So, paradigm shift, adjusting with the times. So, that's, I think, how cinema can survive. So, the big question, is cinema dead? I'll go back to how I started the presentation. No? Human beings are largely social and human beings live by stories. And for me, cinema is not dead. It's evolving. So, lastly, I think instead of the big question, this is the better question. So, how to push cinema forward? It's not going to die for me. It's just evolving, and how can we help push it forward? So perhaps we develop and adapt the right technological innovation, especially now. I mean, it's very clear naman where we're heading in terms of how streaming is doing. and how theaters are doing right now. And we have to acknowledge the needs of the audiences, the different audiences that we have, so we can cater to them. Like some people really prefer to, just sit in their homes and watch movies in Netflix, diba? There's a particular audience for that. There's another, there are audiences for art films. We have different audiences, and we just need to acknowledge their needs and attend to them. So focus on both watching films collectively, like in the theaters, and watching films personally, wherein yung streaming mas pumapasok doon. So yeah, that's it for my presentation for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rianne, for that presentation. It helps contextualize what it is that we're about to discuss here at the forum. So just to let everyone know that we will be doing a question and answer portion at this point in time. But I will be asking a few questions first. If you have any questions, you can put it up onto the chat box and I will read it out. Or you may raise your hand and then we can try and do an audience participation to ask your questions to the panelists themselves. But I'd like to ask first from Ms. Madonna and Sir Alem, based on Rianne's presentation and she was talking about the needs of the audiences, it seems that there's a large shift for audiences to be watching movies on streaming. So cinema might not be dead, so to speak, but does that mean watching cinemas in the theater, is that a dead art? What are your opinions on that? Madonna,
Ako muna. Sige,
Go
ako
ahead.
muna, Alem. Si Alem mas may broad experience to eh. No, but I agree that the cinema is evolving, and unfortunately, none of us really anticipated that the pandemic was going to happen and the impact of that moving to today. I don't think cinema is dead. I totally agree. I think it's a slow burn. I think it will open new doors to new voices. Kasi before today, my mindset was cinema needs to be an experience already. It's like an event. And I think that you're not going to lose that, because the ones which really make money are films that are action films, like the Marvel universe, the DC universe, Star Wars, etc. Top Gun, I think, is still the highest grossing in the Philippines so far, no? But at the same time, an Inconvenient Love just opened 2 days ago, and there was a really large audience watching it, no? And we're not even hitting the weekend first. It may not be the numbers pre-pandemic, kasi pre-pandemic, that they do 25 million a day, 50 million a day, 100. But now I think they're at 6 to 7 million a day, and that's not a bad number for a studio distributing a commercial film nationwide. It is not a bad number at all. It may not be an event film. I haven't seen it, right? But I am very sure it's not an action film. It's a young adult film, right? So I think I will always go back to this. If it's a really, really good story, and I think people are hungry for that good story, especially if you're a Filipino producer, I think people will watch your film. So it's a mix of, I think, marketing is important, the build-up for Star Cinema before. I think it was very strategic. The timetable they had to build, no? From the time they watched. And let's face it, amongst all those studios, I think Star Cinema talaga, yung may traction na pinapanood talaga ng mga masa. Kasi kahit anong sabihin natin, streaming platform, you need to pay for that. And I was speaking to some of the platforms, and to be honest, the audience, the target audience, is really A, B, and C. So where does your D and E now, where do you leave them? Definitely,
Right.
You don't want to encourage them to keep pirating, right? So where do you now leave them? So they are really looking forward, okay, to being in a situation like you said, cinema is social. To be bringing their families, bringing their barcadas, an opportunity to meet up, right? And this is, I think, one of those films. So babalik lang ako lagi sa pag maganda ang kwento, engaging, gutom ang tao sa mga magagandang kwento, I think manonood sila. Now, if I compare that now to the art films or to films that are festival films are being shown in cinemas, you also need to be very strategic. I don't think it's a strike anywhere kind of distribution that you want to hit. Because to be honest, hindi naman yun talaga papanoorin. Of course, you want literacy is important, but education is something that we aspire for many things in this country. And film literacy is just literacy is just one part, right? Education is, we beg for that for many things that we want for this country. But yung immediate, I think hindi yon. Kailangan, you have to be strategic in distributing depending on your content. Now, there are stories for cinema, I believe. There are stories for streaming. I think yun yung ano ngayon, no? The divide is that. So in my head, ganon. Even kami, when we strategize, it's like that. And I'm not talking about it has to be an action film, It can be something that a larger audience is going to enjoy and they want that experience. I think yun yung very different points of view ng streaming and cinema for me.
Thank you so much. I have some follow-up questions about that, Ms. Madonna, but we'll go and get Sir Alan's response first.
Sure.
One of the things that I found out, in my travels, is that there are actually festivals now, as in international festivals, that are looking for films that are also not too depressing, and that struck me. Kasi these are already international film festivals. These are festivals whom you expect to normally will be showing any type of films, like even the films that are difficult to watch. And yet now there seem to be a trend, or at least there are certain festivals already that seem to be finding escapist forms of entertainment. And so this really shows the pandemic really affected not just the Philippines, but how everybody is watching cinema. And so, just like Rianne said, when you look historically, we really do need to evolve. And I guess now that's the challenge, no? And I hope we have like maybe the FTCP or maybe a government or the creative industries, the people behind the creative industries bill would actually do an actual survey or an actual study on what people really do watch and how their viewing habits change and what would actually get them into cinemas. Parang ganon. So yun.
It's an interesting thing that you mentioned, Alam, about how even international film festivals are looking for
Hopeful,
optimistic content, because like we are sort of conditioned now. If it's a film festival, that means these are serious work. They're heavy. But now even film festivals have changed their. So the pandemic must have changed everybody psychologically on how they want to accept film. And I think this correlates with what Ms. Rianne was talking about in her presentation about content, the creativity, the stories that are found within them. But one of the follow-up questions I wanted to ask Ms. Madonna is that you said there are stories now that are fit for the cinema and stories that are fit for mainstream. Why a movie like a rom-com like Ngayon Kaya, I was looking all over for it is the first local Filipino film that produced I can't find the numbers of how it did in the box office, but the movie of Bel Mariano and Donnie Pangilinan that's showing is like lines and lines of people watching it. So what makes rom-com versus that rom-com? and then why Black Panther is always going to be a big hit, but Black Adam, for example, is not doing the numbers that it was supposed to do. So I want to ask all three panelists, how do you determine if a story is set for the cinema, and how is a story fit for a streaming site? And how do you train for that? How do you train to learn the difference?
Okay, before I answer your question, I totally agree with Alem. You know, one of our frustrations as producers really is the lack of data and research that are available to us in terms of audience viewership, preferences, because that's important when you're starting to produce something. So you know what you know where you're targeting, and you know how to distribute your film, right? So yan yung frustration talaga. And that it has somebody has to endeavor that kind of research. Sa akin, maybe, partly because people missed Star Cinema. I will just go with that. I think they missed Star Cinema. They missed ABS-CBN, a large part of that. Maybe that's part of it. Second is Bel Mariano and Donnie Pangilinan is a product. That love team is a product of the pandemic. That love team is a product of a series that was aired in streaming. That's he's into her. I remember that. So
Yes.
they are a product of that. And I think part of the excitement is being able to watch them outside of that online perspective. And I'm pretty sure, knowing Star Cinema movies, as Alam said, the film is very hopeful.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable. It's escapist. It's entertaining. I'm pretty sure it's something like that. And I think hindi dahil it cuts across classes yan. So I think people would love to watch that. Now, Wakanda, Black Panther always tells good stories.
Mhm.
If you've seen Black Adam, I don't think they're in that space. So I will go back to maganda ang pagkakakwento ng Wakanda, hindi maganda ang pagkakakwento ng Black Adam. For a very discriminating audience who will pay 400 pesos,
Mhm.
right? For 400, kung IMAX ka, mas mahal pa. Then you expect something more out of it, right? So to me, yun. Kasi may history na yung Wakanda. People anticipated with the death of Chad. Yeah, yeah. And then the change, I think people anticipated that, especially if you're a fan. Pero kung pangit yung kwento mo, talagay ko hindi ka naman talaga tatagal. Kahit na ano pa yan, klaseng pelikula. 'Di ba? Kahit na anong klaseng pelikula. So yon. For streaming and cinema, very, very blatant. For streaming, yung pinapalabas, for example, for Viva Max, hindi mo yan pwede panoorin sa sinehan. So automatically, you know that the risque and the more sensitive ones, they will go to the streaming for those kinds of films. For cinema, hindi mo naman mapapanood because there's censorship. So, yeah. I mean, yon, no? Then si Alam.
Yeah, so Alam, I'd like to also know, because as a producer, when scripts come to your hands and for you to take a look at them, are you able to determine whether a film is good for the cinema or if a film is good for just for streaming? Like what are the things that you have to watch out for?
I guess as a disclaimer, I'm not a mainstream producer.
Yeah.
I'm not a type who does box office and such, no. But I guess when I read the script, as cliche as it may sound, let's take it from the word cinema. So it has to be cinematic, right? It has to be. Kumaga, if I'm watching this at home on my TV, or no matter how big my TV is, versus I'm watching it in cinema, there must be something more that the film will offer when it's taken out of the home and into this large screen, diba? And I think that's one. I think for me that's the most important, diba? Na visually and even orally, the director has a vision that can make whatever it is on script
Listen.
to be larger than life, to be really huge, no? And also the kwento. Kasi I think one of the reasons why Filipino films at a point went on a decline is because you can already see the stars on TV.
Mhm.
Mm.
So why would you want to watch films if you can
In
already see them
cinema.
on TV? 'Di ba? Ganon din in the US now, 'di ba? Like very 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 few stars actually do TV. If they're they're film stars, they're very very rare do TV. And then ganon din pag TV sila, it's hard for them to break through the movie, 'di ba? Merong mga exceptions, and usually those are big events, 'di ba?
Mm.
Which goes back to what Madonna said, na event talaga. So you really have to make it an event. Kumbaga, whatever you show, or at least the script, oh wow, this is something I've never seen before, or this is something that's very interesting, or at least from my perspective, or I'm sure from a Maisy perspective, okay, meron ng ganitong similar films that work, and so it can also work, parang
Well,
ganon. Ganon. So I've always tell people na, one, it's very important, the word of mouth, diba? It's very important that people actually like the film. But it also helps if the film is well made. So parang dalawa yan eh. It has to be well made and people like it. And so people will talk about it and people will watch it.
Miss Rianne, on a film critic's perspective, a director and an educator, how does one train to determine, when you're making something, that this is for the cinema and this is for streaming?
It's very interesting kasi hindi pa ganun ka-clear. Although, like, I think ako may mga napapansin akong differences ng streaming versus big screen or theatrical. Kasi, like I mentioned kanina, streaming can be paused. Big screen is meant to be watched na as much as possible, you don't go to the restroom in the middle of the film. So the storytelling for that, for something that's meant for the big screen, it's really meant for you to sit there for 1 to 2 hours. So there's a storytelling difference between that and maybe sa streaming, where there is also this smaller, expected na mas smaller yung screen versus sa big screen. Kasi like when we shoot something na meant for big screen, in terms of cinematography, meron kang choices na ginagawa. Even for IMAX, for example, if you film for IMAX, as in pang 3D, you have certain choices of shots, the way you tell the story, versus if you want to watch something in a small screen. So even with likes of ABPs, kasi I noticed na it's meant for YouTube daw. So if it's meant for YouTube, dapat the way you tell the story, the shots that you have in your mind, it's meant na parang mas preferable siya sa cellphone than sa big screen. Merong ganun eh. I think maganda siyang pag-aralan kasi sa palagay ko at this point in time, hindi pa siya masyadong napag-aaralan. Pero you see these things na eh. So there is a difference in film language between the way the audiovisual language is different between cinema and TV series or teleseries. Yung ganon kasi sa teleseries, 'di ba, may gaps kasi may commercial. So I think we can apply that kind of thinking with regards to streaming versus theatrical. So it's clear kasi between cinema and teleserye and TV nga. The way it is clear between TVC and AVP, the way it is clear between a short film for a film festival and a branded short film for a client. 'Di ba? Makikita mo iba-iba yung paraan ng pagkukwento, choices of, from shots to the screenplay, merong mga pagkakaiba. And magandang tignan natin 'yon. Aside from the fact na I think isa ring malaking is A-list actors tend to be, in the big screen. And then mas yung mga influencers, mas nagiging star sila sa streaming. Yon. So I think we need more studies for these things. Pero so far, that's what I've been noticing.
Great. So, I mean, I also noticed that you were talking about how, 400 pesos a ticket, dapat maganda talaga ang pelikula. Like, it has to be a really good movie for people. So the price is also a big factor to this.
I mean, for me kasi, if you want to get back on your feet, any business, I think, diba? Kung gusto mong bumalik, there has to be a little bit of a concession made. If you don't want to lessen the ticket price of, cinema, then that better be good. Because 400 pesos for, some people, it's really no joke. And not only that, you're going to sit there for 2 hours watching a film. Diba? So, hindi, at saka ang 400, hindi naman natatapos sa 400 yun. Kasi 400, isang tao lang yon. And then you wanna buy a popcorn, you wanna buy soda. And then after that, you wanna go out, you want to eat, right? So, I think it's that cycle. And maybe if it's not the 400, because I understand naman where, the cinemas are also coming from, maybe the taxes that are imposed on movies. And that's government driven. I think tayo, if we're going to champion Philippine cinema, it has to work hand in hand, not always with the private sector, but also with government. Malaking bagay because in very sophisticated countries with sophisticated cinema, government plays a huge factor in driving the business of cinema, because in the end it's really business. That exhibitor, yun ang negosyo nila. The producers, yun ang negosyo namin, and we do want to recover all our interests at the end of the day. Maaring hindi kami kumita, pero at least mabawi namin so that we could continue producing films, diba? Because otherwise then we will just stop. Then we won't produce anything. Kasi iba-iba naman ang objective ng bawat isa na gumagawa ng pelikula. A mainstream studio, they want box office because probably the stakes are higher. For independent producers, for Alem and myself, for example, we want to recover what we invested because we want to continue producing films also. Iba rin naman yung objective doon. Diba? So, important yun.
With regards to that, I want to ask all the panelists, what are your thoughts about, there was an article in Manila Bulletin back in July of this year where Senator Bong Revilla filed for the House Senate Bill number 28 that says he wanted to remove taxes on the entertainment industry and to provide special remunerations for businesses based on the LGU, etc., where the movies are being filmed. Do you think there's any possibility that this will be passed? That for the longest time, we have the highest entertainment tax on any film industry in the whole world. Do you think this bill has any chance of passing? What are your thoughts about this bill? If you guys have heard of it?
I've not heard of it, but I'm not surprised that there's a call for this. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's really how big a push the people. We have all these showbiz people in politics. I don't know how good they are in pushing for this to pass. Kasi as we all know naman, the Philippines, if there's a political will, things can move. And so yun. So I hope nga if they're serious about this and they really want to do to help the industry, that they'll find ways and means to get this passed.
Any other comments, Rianne or Madonna? Okay,
yes,
na.
Rianne.
Sige. Sige, ako muna. Sige. Kasi may economics yan yung sa taxes, kung tutusin, para siyang kailangan. Maybe I can, syempre, point of view ko to, based from my experience, and kasi I was part of COFIC, so I had my internship in COFIC before, Korean Film Council. So one thing that really made me cry when I was there, I was in a round table discussion with, somebody from India, somebody from Vietnam, somebody from Korea, etc. And then they asked how much ang tax ng film sa bansa nila. Aware naman ako na local government yan, LGU. So minsan, correct me if I'm wrong, parang may pinakamataas yata 40%. Pero iba, 10%. lahat sila 5%, 3%. Parang nung ako, parang ayoko sumagot. Tapos naiyak na lang ako pag uwi ko kasi parang grabe yung mukha nila when I answered the question. Yung parang shock na shock sila. How do you survive? Somebody really told me that. As in, I think he was Canadian. How do you survive? Hindi ko alam. I was young. I was 20s. Hindi ko rin alam kung paano ko naman sinagot or baka ginusto ko lang kalimutan. Pero parang feeling ko kasi kung i-base natin sa what I learned in COFIC, they're a quasi-government body. They have tax. Yeah, they tax the films. Pero diretso sa coffers ng COFIC, hindi diretso sa local government, hindi diretso sa national government. So it's a win-win situation. The more taxes they get, the more they can fund projects for their films. So for me, like I said, hindi naman ako economics person, so hindi ko talaga sure kung ito yung tama, pero taking it from that model, na feel ko okay lang may tax. I mean, lahat naman tayo tinataksan. Okay lang may tax, pero sa palagay ko, yung paraan ng pag-utilize ng tax, parang unfair. Kasi bakit binibigay sa LGU? Sana binibigay sa, I don't know, FDCP or a new government body for film or basta gano'n, NCCA ba? Sana diretso sa film para the more na makakolekta dahil malaki yung kinikita, the more na marami kang ilalabas para sa proyekto, para sa mga filmmakers, para sa studios, kasi gano'n yung ginagawa ng Korea. Ayun, so yun yung for me.
France also does that. The taxes that kaya France has the best funding for films, that they even give funding for countries like us.
That's true.
Because of that rule. Yeah.
That's true. Talagang syempre economics plays a big part of everything because, cinema is a business. No matter what we say. It's a creative, it's an art form, it's creative, but at the end of the day, it's a business. So, it has to be a win-win situation for everybody, all the stakeholders. And yan na nga, sabi nila yan, ang problema dito, you don't know how your taxes are utilized. And in all aspects, you're not talking about just the film industry, right?
I'd like to take this opportunity to remind the audience that if you have any questions, you can raise your hands. We'll call you to join in and ask your question, or just type it on the chat box and I'll look over them and ask the ones that we can ask right away to be able to further deepen this topic and answer any of the burning questions in your mind about whether cinema is dead or not. So moving on with other aspects of this, is piracy still a problem? Is that still a huge problem?
Yes, it is. Definitely. Political will yan. Hindi yan basta-basta matatanggal. Definitely, it's a problem. I've heard it from producers. I've heard it from directors. And that's really the main problem. You get things for free. Diba? Walang nagbabayad ng pelikula mo. It may go viral, pero hindi nababayaran. So, what does it do to your film, right? So it's still very much there.
So this is another aspect of which the government can try and help somehow to be able to curb. Like, is there anything from your experiences abroad, traveling abroad, dealing with other film-centered countries like ours, etc., that they've done to curb piracy? In that we might be able to adopt?
Nanghuhuli sila. That's it. They really catch people who do it. And that's
like diba, being very, for example, you go to the US, you have to be very careful about the content of your hard drive or your content of your computer, because anytime they can apprehend you. And I've heard of stories where certain households pirate films, and here comes the FBI going to your house and apprehending you. I mean, there are, if again it's political will, if you really want to, you can stop it. You can. It maybe take baby steps to do it, but you can. if you just really, kaya nga sa akin government plays a big role in sustainability.
Okay.
Because otherwise, what's gonna happen to an industry where I think could be part eventually of our GDP, of
Yeah.
our economy. Diba? I think if we make it very sustainable, we don't lack the creativity, but we have been trained to be so boxed about concepts, about budgets, and you can understand, because why will you put out so much money if you know that there is no platform to bring it to, or you know that there is no support for you to at least recover, diba? And isa pang ugali natin, I think, I'm so happy that there's so much Filipino representation globally. But
Yes.
what makes me really sad is they need to be recognized first abroad to be celebrated in their own country. I think that is another part of our culture that affects the kind of viewing habits that we have, and the kind of support that the government is giving. Very reactionary. Very reactionary. Diba? Instead of having a program, it's always like reactionary.
Mm-mm.
So-
just to share a
Go.
story. I have a friend in Germany who actually has a federal case because he had a guest na Pinoy na nag-download. At since sa kanyang bahay siya yung may case ngayon.
Yeah.
So it's that strict. Those are the ways with which
Yes.
some governments are so clear-cut about their rules on piracy.
Yeah.
Kasi mahuhuli. Dito naman, the laws are all there. It's a matter
Hindi lang
of
na-implement.
enforcement. Diba? Nandyan lahat yan. Nako, hindi tayo nagkukulang sa batas. Nandyan lahat yan.
So we have a question here at the chat box. Given that the industry is being taxed, do you think the government plays a role in ensuring that cinema will not die? Yes, we've discussed this already in terms of whether they can be stricter in implementing rules against piracy, whether they can decrease the taxes that is taken from the entertainment industry, or if they're going to ask that much, to return it to the industry itself, produce and grant subsidies with the money that they get, or build infrastructure. What else can the government do other than piracy, other than taxes? Is there anything else that our government is lacking in terms of helping the industry from
I
not
think
dying?
that, ako, like every time we send an Oscars entry, but it's prestigious. But do we lobby for it? Do we help that film get to the top? It matters, If sa Oscars, pag nagpadala ka or any award-giving body, akala lang natin, you will get it based on merit. You just think you will get it based on merit. Sa saksakan kasi ng ganda ng pelikula mo, yun ang paniniwala mo. But I think you have to remember that you are competing with the best of the best worldwide. And these people are supported by governments so that they can lobby for the films. Kasi ang publicist, napakamahal niyan. Somebody was telling me, 10 photographers lang meron sila, but yung kalaban nila, 100 ang photographers. It matters to drum up a lot of publicity for your film.
Pero
Yun lang, diba?
Also, I don't know, this is recorded.
Choosing.
Yeah!
I wanted you to say that. Go.
Yeah, I mean,
Go.
so who are these people choosing it? Na they just are not aware of how to choose the entry. Kasi, anyway, don't wanna go there. Okay, I have to share something, but I don't know if this is so about support, diba? So Plan 75 is Japan's entry, right? But you know what? They will only start promoting it when it's shortlisted na. So in short, anything you do before shortlisted parang they
It's
see it as a
nothing.
waste of money.
So it's timing also when strategically, di ba?
No, and this is already a Cannes award-winning film.
Awarding.
But I think they also can tell if you can tell naman who are the maingay and not the maingay, di ba? So parang gano'n. But anyway, that's Oscar, and that's a totally different animal.
Different, yeah.
So on a film level, in terms of profitability of any film, regardless of what country, an Oscar nomination is bigger than a Cannes win. Is that what you're saying?
No, it
Hindi naman.
depends on your target audience.
Okay.
Because a Cannes title will guarantee you distribution worldwide. So
Okay.
Plan 75 is doing extremely well for its type of film
Yeah.
worldwide
Okay.
because it has distribution in quite a good number of countries.
I also want to
Oscars is
add,
Oscars,
yung-
di ba?
Yeah.
Oscars naman is
Ah.
American, di ba? And
Hollywood.
oo.
And kailangan talaga ng, yun nga, yung PR, etc. Kasi another thing that I learned with Korea, if you notice, Kofik has Asian office, as in hindi sa Korea, kundi somewhere else. They have a Los Angeles office. They have somewhere in Europe na office. Meron silang opisina ng, hindi ko alam kung para silang FDCP or NCCA, parang gano'n. Meron silang opisina sa ibang bansa. Nagagastosan nila yon. That's a government agency in different countries. Tapos, one thing na I learned when I was there, napaka-importante pala ng parties.
Yes.
Napaka-importante daw ng parties.
Hindi lang
Networking.
Hindi lang junket ang pagpunta.
Hindi lang junket.
Festival.
I think it's networking.
At
Alam mo kung
sobrang
masipag
nakakapagod.
ka. Yan si Alem, napakasipag niyan. See? And where it has gotten him this far, di ba? Kailangan masipag ka. Hindi ka naman magpa-party para ka lang uminom at kumain at etc. Of course, that's part of it.
Networking siya.
But also part of the reason why you go is because you want to meet people. And sometimes these people are there. Diba? So,
At pagkakagastusan siya. Like Korea, nagagastos sila ng parties para sa Parasite, di ba? During
hindi
that time
ganun
na nasa
talaga.
Oscar siya.
It's,
Oo.
I mean, may
Ganun
merch,
talaga siya.
may
Yeah.
like the Kofik party in Cannes, they were giving the Squid Game something related to Squid Game.
yeah.
And then there was a time in Cannes naman they were serving the noodles that was in Parasite.
Yung sa Parasite.
So it's a whole thing. It's a whole concerted effort. And then when I attended a Thai event in Cannes where they even brought the princess, one of the royals, the Thai royals, it was not sponsored by their FTCP. It was sponsored by their economic DTI, their
Government. Yeah.
their trade and industry. Kasi they see films and bringing people to shoot in Thailand or to work in Thailand as a form of it helps the economy. It helps the industry. They see it that way. It's not just cultural. Versus and then when you go naman to, so there are programs, let's say in Locarno Open Doors, and there are funding in Switzerland. They're sponsored naman by their DFA. They see it as their foreign affairs. So there are different ways to look at these things and not just something as frivolous as pelikula lang yan.
Yeah.
So for Philippine cinema to not like die on us, we really have to see it like the question that Ms. Rianne said in her presentation. It's not just a question of commerce or art. It's both. It's geopolitical in its respect. It's a cultural artifact.
You're a cultural and economic ambassador. You're
Tourism.
an entrepreneur. Lahat yan dapat pakita. So when you send a filmmaker to a festival, it's not pinapa-junket mo lang siya or you're paying for that person na maglamierda. It's not. You're really promoting the country's culture, the country's
You represent your country.
Yes. Like right now, that you have Chai, you have You have for our film we had the Filipino, we had Stephanie in our
Dali.
film, and you had to the north,
Dolly De Leon.
and then you have of course
Soliman.
Soliman.
Arthur Soliman.
So that means
Soliman Cruz.
shows talent also is also another way, no, that it's exportable, that we can actually benefit from all these things. But you need exposure. You need to be seen in these festivals. You need to be there. Okay? So it's not enough na may tulong ka here and there. No, you really have to have this whole big exposure. Eh.
So it's not just a local problem. It has to be seen also as a global opportunity for
Yes.
it to be taken to be considered something that the government should really push.
Kasi ito pa lang eh, 'di ba? Parang aminin na natin, the people who are watching, the people who can afford to pay 400 up for tickets are not Filipino film viewers. They won't watch a Filipino film. They're the ones who think that Filipino films are bakya. Sorry, I don't know what's the term now. No, who are that Filipino films are regardless are not good. But they're also the same people na okay, this is an Oscar ganyan, this one ganyan. Then they will give it a chance.
They might watch, yeah.
Right? So yun eh. Or at the end subsidize also people who are releasing in cinemas or things like that. Na diba in other countries they have the what you call it, they help the industry, they help the banks, they help the airline industry, diba? Parang ganon.
Even
eh.
DOT, yung parang tourism, diba?
Yeah, so
They
tax
do.
Rebates? Is it tax rebates or parang extra?
Tax incentives.
Tax incentives, yeah.
Yun,
Tax incentives.
Yung incentive to film in the Philippines, tinaasan yung minimum na naman. So that means no one's coming here. I mean, people will come here less and will not be inclined to come here. And this provides jobs, this provides exposure, and this opens these open doors na yun eh, na sana mas makita. Sorry, one more. I have so much to
Okay,
write.
go.
And
No,
then
this is
imagine this year is the first year ever in the history of the Philippines that there's at least one Filipino-made, Filipino-produced, or Filipino co-produced film in every single major festival.
Yeah.
And some of them are winning.
Yeah.
So Berlin has a Filipino short. Cannes, it's my Plan 75. Sundance has two. There's a short and a feature na Pinoy. And then Locarno has Arnold, which is a Filipino co-produced.
Yeah.
Venice also has Filipino co-produced and Filipino actor. Cannes also has a Filipino actor. So every single and these are not just these did not happen overnight. These were pinaghirapan yan. And so I hope we don't drop the ball.
Yeah.
So is it safe to say that with all of these things that are happening on the global sphere, that there's a possibility that this is going to have an impact or an effect on our local industries, that if the more that we get recognized abroad, the better it's going to be for the industry on the long run. Hopefully people will take notice and people will start to put more attention to our industry.
Well,
Ako naman, if that's what it takes. Me naman, if that's what it takes, diba? Then let's do it. Kasi yun nga yung frustrating dito eh. Kailangan mo muna ma-recognize sa ibang bansa bago ka ma-recognize dito sa sarili mong bakuran.
It's cultural.
Pero then, let's turn that into an opportunity. If that will sustain us and, all of a sudden the government will look at us or other entities will look at us and say, oh, it can be something really to promote this country wherever we go, then so be it, diba? Sa akin naman, why not? Why not?
I mean, this discussion that we're having, talking about how the Filipinos who actually have the money to pay for the tickets, the exorbitant prices of tickets, they'll only watch a Filipino show because it had a Filipino movie because of how well it has done in festivals abroad. There are a lot of questions here on the chat box where people are really asking, does that make cinema, at least cinema in the theaters, an elitist, an upper class, thing. Does that mean there is, taking into consideration the financial capabilities of Filipinos today, do you consider cinema to be an exclusive platform for the middle and upper class? And when you start talking about piracy, a lot of Filipino families would love to watch movies, but they can't. So they prefer to wait na lang for the downloads. Is cinema in the Philippines class exclusive?
So basically, at the end of the day, it's like this, right? People want to have cars, but you won't steal a car,
Mm-hmm.
right?
You need to pay for it.
Yes. People are always bitching about how bad Filipino series are, Filipino films are. Why don't we be more like K-dramas? Or why don't we be more like Hollywood, right?
That
Well,
article.
kung walang nanonood at walang naniniwalang we are capable of doing those types of stuff, and people will actually support films that do those types of things, then wala talagang mangyari, diba? Whether or not it's elitist, technically, in a way, when you look at it, art is, diba? Art is, diba? Art is, in a way, mataas, right? So that's why you really have to make it accessible, whether it's art galleries, art museums, orchestras, etc., etc. Diba? Ang tingin kasi mataas. So you really have to bring it down. Other
Right.
countries see it as their opportunity, as their ability to bring it down, to pull it down, but others don't. Yun.
Ms. Rianne, do you have any thoughts about that? Is cinema exclusively for the is it class exclusive? Considering the things that we talked about just a while ago, and the way that our audiences, based on the chat box, are looking at how price, global recognition brings the people who have the spending power to watch Filipino films, whereas the ones who actually do love Filipino films in all of its forms, the commercial films, etc., they're the ones who can't afford it. What's your thoughts about that?
Mag-take off ako dun sa sinabi ni Alem kanina. Kasi for me, chicken and egg siya eh. Paano gaganda kung hindi mabibigyan ng opportunity? Paano ka magkaka-opportunity? Hindi ka binibigyan kasi wala ka pang nagawa. Parang may ganun siya eh. So chicken and egg siya. Well, now with regards to, kung elitist siya, yes, may ganun siyang aspeto. Pero hindi ibig sabihin na completely exclusive lang siya. Kasi pwede ka mag-ipon kung meron kang gusto talagang panoorin. Pupunta ka sa MMFF, mag-iipon. May opportunities na meron na kahit lower middle class or parang gagawin nilang event nila yun sa pamilya na mag-iipon sila, ito yung gagawin nila. Kumbaga, yung vacation nila, yung family time nila, mag-iipon sila for that. The way we do travel. I mean, I do believe that there is some aspect na may ganon. But that means hindi yung every week nanonood. So, kumbaga, makakapanood sila pero talagang momentous occasion. Hindi sila mawawala talaga. Pero aminin natin, talagang may economic kasi talaga siya. So, yun yung nakikita ko. So, that means kung yung mga producers, titignan nila talaga kung ano yung mag-cater sa audience, sino yung pupunta sa ganitong klaseng pelikula, para sa ang platform ba tong pelikulang to, para at least dynamic siya, merong iba-iba. Kasi kung magfo-focus lang tayo sa isa, I don't think it's gonna work. Since iba-iba nga yung audiences natin. So yun.
Ako naman, Wanggo, parang I agree with Rianne and Alem, but at the same time, I wouldn't call it elitist. I think it's more of an affordability issue for me. Kasi kahit nasaksakan ng ganda ng pelikula, kung hindi mo talaga kayang maglabas ng 400, di ka manonood. But I totally agree, kailangan pag-ipunan kung talagang gusto mo. But at the same time, you also want to make it sustainable to encourage everybody to keep watching films. Kasi hindi pwedeng once a year lang nanonood, hindi yun sustainable. So affordability, ang dami na naming naisip eh. Can local films enjoy a lower ticket price versus Hollywood films, for example, versus foreign films, for example. Kasi yung foreign films, kahit anong sabihin mo, maglalabas at maglalabas yung may kaya ng 400 pesos. Pero yung local films natin, kung kalahati lang ang binabayaran, basta baka mas may chance na manonood, diba? Pangalawa, I think it's also cultural. Let's face it, hindi talaga tayo parang kulang yung pagmamahal natin sa sariling atin. Sasabihin ko to, for example, sa klase, if I ask the students, do you watch local content? Some of them don't. Right? Some of them don't. So I think it's also that part, no? There's the cultural part of it. So hindi lang puro economics ang tinitingnan natin. I think it's a mindset. If we change our mindsets, if we learn to appreciate better who we are and the things that we can do, plus maybe government incentives, plus maybe a cooperation between SEAP, the Cinema Association, and together with the producers and together with the entire industry, I think we can make this sustainable for as long as we're clear in our vision na yun ang gusto nating puntahan, na ayaw nating mamatay ang sinihan. We've gone through the worst, right? So this is something that we can do together. I think yan ang problema talaga minsan. It springs from that, diba?
So it's what's great is that we are able to isolate and identify that this is what the government can do. This is the situation at hand because of the pandemic and because of the trends, the innovations, that's the factors or the forces that streaming has become, and that has changed the ways with which people watch movies and view movies. But let's also bring it back, and this is something that I think Bart's would really enjoy, is that we bring it back to the audience. What is their part? Ano naman ang kailangan natin from the audience? And in the presentation, Ms. Rianne talked about film literacy. What do you call this? What can we do to be able to make our audiences more film literate? How we can make the people who shun Filipino films because obviously they haven't seen enough, for them to realize that maganda talaga ang mga pelikulang Pilipino. And for the ones who are the casual commercial film goers, the casual movie goers, to be able to appreciate non-commercial films. What are your thoughts about how we can make our audiences more film literate and to take films not just as an escapist thing, but as a work of art?
Primarily, nagsastart yan education eh. I mean, napapansin ko na rin naman yan, even when we interview like sa Frosh, di ba? So, tatanungin natin sila, merong magsasabi ng ganito na never nakapanood ng Filipino film, na hindi ma-appreciate. Meron din namang nakakapanood. So, mapapansin mo, saan galing eskwelahan ito. So, may ganun siyang factor eh. Ngayon, hindi ko alam kung sa K-12, I think meron na kasi advisor ako ng senior high school film club, art club natin. Mukhang the way I gauge it, meron ng pumapasok na mga, yun nga, sa film education sa senior high school. Baka pwede pa nga ibaba eh, 'di ba? Kasi marami naman tayong marami pa tayo kasi dapat minumold mo nila yung mga minds nila, hindi yung parang stateside tapos ang local is ew, 'di ba? Right. Parang yan eh, kasi yung anak ko, 5-year-old, 6 kasi 6 lang, ang hilig niya sa putek, hindi ko siya hinahayaan ko lang siya, hilig niya sa putek, naglalaro siya ng putek, ganyan. Eh ako, na-realize ko, as a kid, hoy, bawal yan, mapapalo ka, madudumihan ka. So ako, parang pag may nakita kong putek hanggang ngayon, nandidiri ako. Pero yung anak ko, hindi. So, in the same vein, parang kung ititrain mo sila na ma-appreciate yung mga, let's say, children's films natin, animated films natin, legends, yung mga, yung mga mythical creatures natin, from literature to cinema, doon natin makukuha. Yung mga matatanda, aminin natin, mahirap na yan. Let's start with the children, with the teens, with the people in college. So I think it's really essentially education yung sa film literacy. Tapos siguro magsispill over na lang yan sabihin na sa mommy, daddy nila, di ba? So, mas magkakaroon ng appreciation. Pero ultimately, sa kabataan siguro, kasi cultural siya eh. Mahirap yung sa mata ng tanda.
You
So,
know,
sana dun tayo mag-focus.
there are European countries that actually give funding for people who will
Yeah.
children's films. Two,
Yeah.
who will actually subsidize children distribution of films. Berlin, which is one of the biggest festivals in the world, has a section for the youth. And then they get funding also for that. And then they actually bring kids to watch. There are film festivals that they bring kids to watch. And these are all subsidized. So at the end of the day nga talaga is it's really hard for the industry to just be on their own, and it will help talaga any support.
Long-term siya eh. Pag sa education, long-term.
So
Yeah,
I think
long term.
So thank you very much, Ms. Madonna, Sir Alem, and Ms. Rianne for this wonderful conversation we've had. I mean, it seems that what we're not talking about the death of cinema. We're talking about the evolution and how to move forward, where cinema can go. And based on the discussions that we've had today, we've discussed about the government's part in the ways with which our government can help us move forward, how it can help the industry beat the economic challenges that we're facing. We've talked about the amount of creativity that we have, and the fact that that our global recognition, and to look at our films not just as a commercial product, but as cultural products that we can use to create a better images for our country. And at the same time, the needs of the audiences to become more film literate. And maybe the way to do that is to even start film education earlier. What's going to help continue this evolution of Philippine cinema to the level that is comparable to the way cinema is thriving in other nations. So I think it's really wonderful that we've been able to discuss this idea, but cinema is not dead, it's evolving. So thank you very much. And I will, I think it's such a wonderful discussion. And I think I'll be bringing us back to our hosts, Tony and Angelica.
Oh, thank you so much, Sir Wanggo, Miss Madonna, Sir Alemberg, and Miss Rianne for all your insights. On behalf of the College of St. Benilde Film Department, we would like to award the certificates of appreciation to Miss Rianne Soriano, Miss Madonna Tarrayo, Mr. Alemberg Ang, and finally our moderator, Mr. Wanggo Gallaga.
For imparting
you.
your knowledge, time, and expertise in being a guest speaker for the webinar entitled Is Cinema Dead? What Can Make the Audiences Go Back to Movie Theaters? Held via Zoom, given this 25th day of November of 2022. Signed by Direct Jose Javier Reyes, Chairperson of the Benilde Film Department. So we would like to thank you all for taking time to educate and inspire the young students of Benilde. The knowledge you have imparted to us will be of much help in our film journeys and applied to our future careers.
Now, before we end our session, we would like to request everyone to open their cameras for a quick photo op. Okay. Okay, ready? Page 1. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. Okay, hindi na naka-on kami iba. Okay. Doon na. Tony.
So once again, thank you so much everyone for attending this Benilde Film Talks. And we hope that you learned a lot from our panelists.
We would also like to invite you to the to the Benilde Film Department's future programs, talks, workshops, and events. So kindly like our Facebook page at Benilde Film to keep you updated. And for the students, we would like to remind you to fill out the registration or attendance form in the chat box. This will automatically close at 5 p.m. Thank you again, everyone, for attending. Again, I'm Angel Hildawa.
And I am Tony Matutina, and we wish you all a great day ahead.